number of black residents in Richmond is dropping, even as census numbers show the city's population steadily increasing over the last 20 years.
So what does the change mean for Richmond's present and future? Tonight, we look at the changing face of Richmond as part of our Honoring Black History coverage. You only have to take a trip to the Manchester community to see the growth the city of Richmond is experiencing, with apartment buildings going up and businesses opening in areas that have been all but abandoned.
And so what in fact we are seeing is the precise opposite of what happened in the 20th century.
Dr. Julian Hayter is an associate professor of leadership studies at the University of Richmond.
But there was a mass exodus from cities between the 1940s and the 1970s, right? Very few people know this. The movement of white Americans, almost exclusively white Americans, into America's suburbs was the greatest human migration in history.
Leaving behind inner city communities containing mostly African-American residents with little investment and growing crime.
There was this fear in the United States in the late 20th century of inner city crime.
But now, not only are people returning to the city, they're also buying homes and renting apartments here.
What we're seeing is that neighborhoods that were once undesirable had been so economically depreciated over the course of the 20th century that now the economic incentives to move back into cities like Richmond has finally eclipsed the fear.
Tax incentives paired with a desire for improved commutes have sent people streaming back into Richmond to live. However, census numbers show, while the white population in Richmond has grown from nearly 76,000 to 103,000, or about 31%. Over the last 20 years, the African-American population has decreased from 113,000 to 106,000, or a decrease of 6.4%.
Just a $430,000 house right here in a neighborhood, for all intents and purposes, that had been forgotten about.
The demand driving up housing prices and property taxes, pricing out some potential and long-term residents, especially African-Americans.
So on the one hand, we've incentivized people through public policy to move back into these areas, but then done very little to safeguard the people who have been there for decades from being displaced by this inward migration.
We are just getting to the place where every one of my colleagues are talking about affordable housing.
Richmond City Councilwoman Ellen Robertson has lived in the Highland Park neighborhood for years.
1, 2, 3, 4 of those homes that over there that the African-American families used to live in, it's all white families.
While she questions the accuracy of the census overall, she does not question the shift.
And I can just walk down the street, house by house, and the change of the African-American families that used to live here versus the ones that don't live here now is tremendous. So it's not just the increase in white population.
And she emphasizes it's also not primarily an issue of race, but an economic one that disproportionately affects those earning $50,000 a year or less.
We have a hard time putting incentives in place to support them staying in the city of Richmond, okay? But we can give tax breaks to the president of the Federal Reserve Bank.
The city has transformed over the last decade plus, with areas like Manchester, Carver, Highland Park, and Scott's Addition all experiencing growth. The changes not only impacting residents, but also businesses.
2070.
Joy Brewer and her husband AJ own Brewer's Cafe in Manchester. They both grew up on Richmond's south side and have a personal connection to the city. She wonders what type of long-term impact this growth will have.
The fear is that the people who are coming in that are not a part of the community, because they don't have the roots here, do they care as much? You know, do they care that they're gonna push some residents out potentially, or other businesses out?
While diversity is a plus, the question remains, is there equity in that diversity? That's a question the city of Richmond and other communities across the country will have to figure out.
There are more people living in cities now. We are in closer proximity to one another than at any point in human history. If we don't come to terms with how we live with one another in these spaces, it is going to be a rocky road forward.
Hayter says cities across the country are experiencing one of the most profound demographic shifts in recent history. He says it's important to understand 20th century urban American history and what helped get us to this point. And for those who are moving into the inner city to not just enjoy the incentives, but to become part of the community and give back. Remember to join us every Thursday through the end of February as we honor more Black history. Deanna.